Welcome back to This Is a Commander channel, where this is a Commander channel, and today I'm going to talk about Commander Tough Rules and Cool Interactions, episode 93. Today's episode is going to continue to look at sagas, and this time as a subscriber question. On the previous saga video, Nick asked a really good question about holding priority when resolving a saga's final chapter in order to get multiple uses out of the final chapter. So let's take a look at the comprehensive rules, what it has to say about sagas, and the when/why they are actually sacrificed. In the comprehensive rules, the section dedicated to sagas is section 714, but the two specific parts that we care about here are 714.2b and then 714.4. So let's take a look at 714.2b. It says that chapter then effect means when one or more lore counters are put onto this saga, if the number of lore counters on it was less than n and then became at least n, do effect. And then we can check out 714.4, which says that if the number of lore counters on a saga permanent is greater than or equal to its final chapter number, and it isn't the source of a chapter ability that has triggered but not yet left the stack, that saga's controller sacrifices it. This is a state-based action and doesn't use the stack. So basically, that means that if you have a card like what Nick suggested, which is Power Conduit, you can use its ability to get multiple triggers from your saga's final chapter. So let's take a look at a very powerful saga and see how this would work. You play your Birth of the Imperium, and it will enter with a lore counter, triggering its first chapter. Then, on your next turn, you move into your pre-combat main phase, and this causes the saga to gain a new lore counter, triggering its second chapter ability. And now we move to your next turn, and you move into your pre-combat main phase, causing it to get a third lore counter to be added to your saga that has 3 chapters to it. This will place the triggered ability of drawing your cards onto the stack, but before you let it resolve, you can use an instant speed card or ability like Power Conduit to remove that third lore counter from the saga. The triggered ability still stays on the stack, and so now when it goes to resolve, it will see that there are fewer lore counters on it than its highest number of chapters, so it will not sacrifice. So you can do this again, next turn, and again, and again, and again repeatedly. Now, to make it more interesting, if you have the means to proliferate counters, then you could trigger a saga's final chapter multiple times in a single turn with other counter removers like Resourceful Defense and Hex Parasite. Resourceful Defense has the activated ability of 4 and a white to move any number of counters from target permanent you control to another target permanent you control. So even if you don't have another saga to move those lore counters over to it, it doesn't matter. You can just move those lore counters onto a creature or even a land of yours. 5 mana to keep activating that is a lot, so something like Hex Parasite might actually be better, as it says for X and a Phyrexian black mana, you can remove up to X counters from target permanent. For each counter removed this way, Hex Parasite gets +1/+0 until end of turn. So just pay 2 life instead of the black mana, or you can pay it if you have the mana, and just put 1 mana into the X each time you proliferate, and you can keep getting multiple triggers of this, which is pretty crazy for some of these sagas. Of course, you can do this trick as well to any of the chapter abilities of a saga, not just the final chapter, but I wanted to focus this episode on the fact that you can do it for the final chapter. As in Magic, you don't often get a chance like this to act before a state-based action does what it does. Be careful with some abilities though, like on Nesting Grounds, as it says, move a counter from target permanent you control onto another target permanent, activate only as a sorcery. Yes, you can use it to move the lore counters around and get multiple uses out of your sagas, but because of that last bit at the end saying activate only as a sorcery, means that you can't use this ability to keep looping the final chapter of a saga. The triggered ability of the saga will be on the stack, which means you can't use something that is at sorcery speed. Still, though, a really good option of a card to loop the earlier chapter abilities from your sagas, or you can use it as a sort of proliferate to keep triggering the last chapter on a saga, and then using one of these other cards to then remove that lore counter to keep that loop going. So thank you very much to Nick for that comment. This is such a cool way to sneak in before state-based actions do their things and get a lot more value out of your more powerful final chapters. Anyhow, that's all I've got for today's episode. As always, I hope that all of you have found this video to be entertaining at least, and I hope that a few of you have even learned something about the crazy rules in this great game of Magic. Have a good one. Ta-ta!